Welcome to the Top Order podcast. Just three of the four OGs with you this evening. We've got Stu and Baldy down under and me here in the chilly UK. We're going to talk, some chilly cricket for England in New Zealand. A bit of rain around, but a 3-0 victory in the ODI leg of England and New Zealand white ball tour. Plenty of positives, Stu said. I'm not sure who for, certainly not for England. We'll also talk some Australia, India. Josh Hazlewood has that white kookaburra on a string, and Kohli and Rohit hit a little bit of form. We'll obviously have some Ashes chat, and we'll also talk a little bit about the semi-final upsets in the Women's World Cup. All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned. Well, boys, let's start with what we trailed last, if that makes sense. Not in terms of the discussion, but just for any listeners tuning in post Women's World Cup final. We did record this episode before the Women's World Cup final, so not going to preview the games too much. So if that's what you're here for, bugger off, because we're not going to talk about it in a massive amount of detail. The game going on, and I know we're all looking forward to watching that. This afternoon for me here in the UK. But there's plenty of cricket going on for all of our respective teams, actually, on the pod today. Let's start as a New Zealand-based cricket podcast with, some positives for New Zealand. Rah, rah, rah. But I guess that's what you're referring to, Stu. There's plenty of positives for the Black Caps to take away from a 3-0 white ball victory on, what can only be described as resembling uncovered pitches down in New Zealand.
Here we go.
Yes, there we go. Straight. The comments are open. The comments are open. But yeah, plenty of positives for the Black Caps boys. Maybe not so much for the England boys, which we'll come on to. What did you make of the series? My one comment I'll just make leading into it is, I think we've seen a lot of England tours to New Zealand in the last 3 or 4 years, haven't we? We seem to always be in New Zealand at the moment. But my observation was this is the sort of emptiest I've seen the grounds for those fixtures in the last sort of 3 or 4 visits. Is that because it's been a bit chilly, too early in the season? But that's my one sort of comment around the, I guess the outside the Toblerones, and then coming on to what's happened inside the Toblerones, you must be pretty stoked over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think for New Zealand, I think there's been a lot here about how the games are too early in the international season that shouldn't have started this early. We saw in the T20s against Australia and the T20s against England, I don't know how many games did we finish? Maybe 2, 3. We didn't finish many out of the 6 that we should have played. So they were a flop. They weren't really worthwhile in any way. I don't think if you look back at them. I think what New Zealand cricket has done is they've looked at the schedule of the Ashes and gone, can we kind of shoehorn in a couple of games here from both teams and try and get a bit of international cricket, because the international summer here in New Zealand is disrupted a little bit because normally we'd have teams here in February or something like that, but T20 World Cup is here then, or is not here then, but over in India. So we miss out on the international summer and the fixtures and things. So I think they've just tried to get those games in, but unfortunately it hasn't really paid off. And if you're looking at why. The Wellington one in particular, that ground is just, quite big. It always looks empty. It looks empty for when rugby games are there. I think it's just too big for if you'd have had that game at the Basin Reserve, then it would have looked a lot better. And that's what we've seen for test matches. And the games that we've played recently here in New Zealand that have been really well attended have been test matches that they play at nice venues. They play at the right sized venues where you're going to get a full crowd and have that kind of atmosphere. And I think that Cape Town Stadium in Wellington just doesn't kind of have that from what you need.
Terrific when it's full, but because it's all yellow,
Yeah.
looks awful when it's empty, right? Because you just see this sea of yellow seats, and if you've got a team that's wearing blue and a team that's wearing black and yellow seats in the background, nothing blends in from that perspective. Let's talk about the cricket on the field, though. I mean, you've entered the chat very, very early in the planning for this episode. I know we didn't have one last week, so you had plenty in the bag ready to pull out. You had lots of arrows in the quiver. At the risk of making this a 4-hour podcast, what caught your eye from a New Zealand perspective?
I think probably the most pleasing thing personally is Daryl Mitchell's form in the ODI series. I don't know if I said it to you guys in the chat or if it was on that episode a couple of weeks ago. I really wanted him to play an innings of consequence. I feel like he's been maybe not looking necessarily out of form, but just it didn't feel like he was making important contributions for the side over the past 6 months. I mean, we haven't played a huge amount of cricket, but maybe even 9 months, 12 months. It feels like where before that, it felt like he was, one of our better batters, very, very consistent. It felt like that had dropped off. But this series we saw, all of those games, to be fair, the bowlers shone, and I'm sure we'll talk about the bowlers. But all three chasers proved to be quite tough in the end at different points in the game. England took some wickets, and there needed to be a partnership. And in all three of the games, it was Daryl Mitchell was one of the people that was there while a partnership was building in that third game. But while those first two games, it was when the decisive partnerships were happening. So, yeah, really, really pleased to see that because he's going to be an important cog in whatever we do, in whatever format, because he is a 3-format player for us. And, leading into if the T20 World Cup is what we're thinking of, that's his role, I think, is quite important because of, that the openers is still a bit in flux about what we're going to do there. Yeah, I think he's important to what we're going to do. And Phillips, we haven't even seen. So, yeah, really, really pleased to see Daryl Mitchell perform. Binksy, I'm sure we'll come back to the New Zealand bowlers, but maybe before we do that, your tone, I feel like you've been quite positive about England in recent times, and you've really entered this episode with a pretty negative side. I know that obviously 3-0 is not ideal. The T20s, we saw Phil Salt and Harry Brook put on some runs and win, the one T20 that we saw there. What has, do these really matters? I mean, for what you said, you got thrown in on 3 seeming wickets and probably didn't handle them that well. I saw a stat floating around that the top 4 English batters made 84 runs in the series. That feels like it can't even be right out of 12 innings.
Feels like a typo.
That feels like it can't be right, but they also didn't score very many runs. And, so, yeah, I don't know. Is there anything that's actually concerning you going into an Ashes series, which I'm sure is what every single, English fan and Australian fan is sort of looking to? They even said it in the commentary last night. England probably has one eye on that series, even while these games were going on.
Yeah. I think that the England guys would argue that they don't have one eye on the Ashes. And certainly that's been the rhetoric from Harry Brook. We're here in New Zealand, we're playing some white ball cricket, but realistically, they're human. And it's kind of like the lead up to Christmas, isn't it? They've got the Ashes advent calendars open. They probably started officially opening those Ashes advent calendars yesterday morning on the 1st of November. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that they'd probably got them from the store a couple of weeks ago. They might have had the odd Ashes mince pie in the lead up to the 1st of November. To answer your question, to be honest, mate, I'm actually not bothered by this series at all. We've been shit at 50 over cricket for a little while now. We've been decent at T20 cricket and, arguably decent at Test cricket, certainly from a sort of watchability and, winning games as well as losing some games as well for a period of time. So I'm not bothered from that perspective. And then the only thing I think I would be bothered about is if any of those, top 4 or 5 batters are bothered by their form, by their technique. I doubt if you'd have asked, Smith and Duckett and Root and Bethel, do you want to go and face Zak Foulkes and Tickner and these guys on green seamers in the cold in New Zealand for a couple of weeks? Is that what you'd like? They'd have probably said, not really. No, I'd like to go and bat on some roads, please, and hit some balls into the stratosphere. That, I think, would have been the tune-up that they would have ideally wanted. But I don't think it's a big impact on that. On that Ashes piece. And then I think the one thing that you'll or that I've taken from this series is I thought Cast looked good the other night when he got a 3 for. And I thought, obviously, Jamie Overton's had a useful little series, and I wonder whether he's thinking, oh, shit, should I have got into the gym a little bit more and maybe got to the stage where I might have been able to play a couple of these Ashes Test matches? Because from what we've seen, he would have looked, he's been bowling in and around that, in your money, 145k, in my money, 90 mile an hour. And obviously could have fulfilled potentially that sort of Chris Woakes style role at number 8 for England. But yes, to answer your question, not massively concerned. I don't think it's a case of, too much around form and technique for those England players. I think they lost all 3 tosses, didn't they, in the ODI leg, and got stuck in on each of those occasions. And then let's be honest, whilst in the end New Zealand chased down those 3 modest scores, on paper it looks as if it was relatively easy. Certainly the game last night, you would have been, heart in mouth for a little while, 8 down and needing Foulkes and Tickner to get you over the line. And even in the sort of, the other games, only losing, 5 or 6 wickets in those, there'd have still been some sort of squeaky bum, losing some of those early wickets throughout the course of the series as well.
Yeah, I mean, that game last night actually proved to be a real ripper. Actually, I was sort of, it felt the whole way that New Zealand were going to find a way to win. They were sort of cruising along. Rutchin and Devon Conway got them off to a great start, but then ball starts hitting the non-strikers stumps, and those that had a bit to play with it, with the couple that happened there.
That, apparently, they said, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure they have. Yeah. But anyway, it just to be 8 down, and I tell you what, actually, I really enjoyed, and fair to say that I've been an advocate of Zak Foulkes for a long time. I was super impressed with his composure in that last little moments of that chase. I mean, Tickner will give a shout out to in a minute as well, because he's for a guy that hasn't even that thought he'd never play again. What a couple of games for him. But yeah, Zak Foulkes, I mean, talk about his bowling as well. Great to see him get the new ball. I think that was really, really key, because when we have seen him without the new ball, I think he's looked a little bit vulnerable. He's sort of just not quick enough, I guess, to be super threatening to the top players when the ball is not moving around. But he's shown an ability to do something that most of the right arm seamers that we have don't really do, and that's to kind of jag it both ways off the pitch. And he's not as tall as Kyle Jamieson or anything, but he's able to kind of seems to be able to get that steep bounce at times. Yeah, seems to kind of just be able to move it enough to get the edge. And yeah, he's I don't know. It's really tricky, because when we're sort of projecting, you guys are looking to the Ashes, I'm looking to that T20 World Cup, and I've been saying all these podcasts, who's our bowling attack going to be? What's our bowling attack going to be? But we just keep getting injured. All these New Zealand bowlers just keep getting injured, and now Matt Henry's injured as well. It doesn't sound like that's super serious. Jamieson missed a couple of games that brought Tickner into the squad, but he's back for the T20. So, but yeah, Sears is out, Ferguson's out. It sort of still feels like we don't really know what's going on. But the good thing is that Duffy is now sort of becoming someone who looks,
reliable.
Reliable, which, again, sounds like faint praise, but that's what you want. You want someone that can just step in whenever other people are out. And, he's done really, really well at the T20s. He's now shown I can do this again in the ODIs. Foulkes steps in, picks up wickets against Zimbabwe in the tests, picks up, wickets here against England. Even Tickner comes in and is able to be man of the match, bowls an absolute ripper to Josh Buttler. What a cool story for him to be able to do that after all the struggles he's had off the field over the past 12 months. So, yeah, really, really encouraging that, I don't know, we always talk about, next man up, next player up when someone gets injured. And for the New Zealand bowlers to all do that, and always seems like whoever is coming into the squad is able to perform, I feel like that's a really good endorsement for the setup and for what's going on in New Zealand cricket in general.
Let's cut through all of that. Of the players you've seen in this England white ball series, who actually has the game that will translate into effectiveness in the T20 scene in India, other than Henry? Because I think, it's probably fair that he's all conditions first bowler on the team sheet as far as pace is concerned.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know that any of those guys will be in the T20 World Cup squad. I think Duffy will have to be there because of the way that he's performed. But, I think the ideal lineup for them would include O'Rourke, it would include Sears, it would include Ferguson. So because you're going to have spin, so you're going to have Bracewell and you're going to have Santner in your 11. And I think they're going to have Henry, Santner, Bracewell kind of pencil, written in pen as long as they're not injured. And then I think they want two quicks, two genuine, what can we get out of this wicket? What can we sort of do that's a little bit different? But I mean, Duffy and Foulkes are the ones that have put their hands up and said, well, if those guys are not fit, if these guys can't get on the park, we're here and we'll be able to perform. So it'll be interesting for Foulkes, it'll be interesting if he does go to a tournament like that, how he's used. Because like I said, it's really important, I think, that he has that new ball. I would bowl him new ball and then just bowl him at the death. He's got lots of variations. He's got lots of tricks up his sleeve. It hasn't always worked at international level. He's shown at times that he can get hit around, but I think that's your best. I think that's when you're going to get the best out of him. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's tricky. That's what I mean. I feel like there's a lot of positives, but we're also going, okay, well, like how does this actually help us going forward? Apart from the fact that we keep winning these ODIs, which is really, really positive.
Yeah, I really like the look of Foulkes. I think that the danger from a T20 perspective is I actually think it's harder to play T20 than it is to play ODI cricket because you need to be able to execute your role more consistently in T20 cricket. There's kind of less opportunities for, a skipper to kind of burgle, 4 or 5 of your 10 overs and then go, it's not your day today. If that happens in T20, the swing's too big. So I think I like the look of him. I just wonder whether he needs to play a little bit more T20 cricket before he's in an ICC tournament, probably on wickets that aren't necessarily going to be always conducive to seam bowling. Your margins of error are going to be very, very low at times. Playing in those conditions. But I really like the look of him. I think the other thing is, can he keep his pace up? This is the start of the New Zealand summer. He looked, sharp early season. Can he maintain that through the whole of the summer, I guess, and be bowling in that 140s region for the whole summer. But I was really impressed with him, and I know Lippy, you've talked about him a lot over the course of the last 18 months or so.
Just 3 very quick things that sort of to finish out off the New Zealand stuff, or 2 quick and maybe one that we might talk about. One, Rachin Ravindra is a beautiful cricketer to watch. Honestly, like that guy, when he hits the ball, I know he didn't make the big scores in this series, but even just a couple of those, couple of shots that he's so quick on that short ball, the drives, awesome. I just hope that we get to kind of see the best of him over the next few years because it's fantastic to watch. Mitchell Santner, those New Balance bats, they've had a pretty good endorsement over the past past 3 games because he looked in incredible form, hit that 100 meter six off Rashid over the, onto the roof of that Wellington Stadium. And then I reckon actually played a better shot. If you guys can remember the free hit he had off Bryden Cass, and he's somehow, Cass, I think, hit the crease. So he's pretty much nailed the Yorker, and Santner's stepped back and bulleted it over cover for 6. So that bat is just rocketing along. If New Balance want to sponsor the pod for all of these friendly words. But yeah, brilliant stuff. And then news that came today about Kane Williamson calling stumps on his T20 career.
T20 international
career. Yeah. I'm sure he'll still play a bit of the T20 stuff on the international circuit or on the franchise circuit. He seems to have enjoyed himself. Just being able to take his family around and enjoy the world, I think, over the past 12 months, it looks like. But I think we've been talking the last couple of weeks about how would he even be in the side anyway, with the way that New Zealand cricket with the way that we seem to be trying to play our T20 cricket. So I think if he was available, yeah.
He wouldn't have been. He wouldn't have been, but he should have been.
Yeah, it's a bit like Joe Root. 100%. Yeah. It's a bit like Joe Root. It's a bit like even Steve Smith for Australia. Like, if you're saying that Kane Williamson is not one of the 6 best batters in the country, I think that's doing him a disservice. I think you're right, though. New Zealand probably want to play cricket a certain way. They probably want to have super attacking batters. Kane Williamson is ostensibly not that guy, but then you go back sort of not that long ago and he's scoring 88 off 48 in a final. So he can do it, right?
That innings, I will never forget.
He can do it.
It's so sad that I can't enjoy that innings properly because of the result. But yeah, fantastic.
And Lippy, do you think he's got a tap on the shoulder, or do you think that is his? He's made that call.
I reckon he's made that call. I think. Whether he's looked around and gone, this is the way they want to play the game, and I might not have been in it anyway. But he's been. It seems from the outside that he's been very upfront. Him and New Zealand cricket have been in pretty good conversations around when he wants. It seems like when he wants to play, they let him play. He's been unavailable for lots of different tours over the past 12 months, lots of different incoming tours, and didn't play in that Zimbabwe series. So yeah, the interesting thing I thought from that press release, the most interesting thing was that Scott Wienink, the CEO, said something about, yes, Kane's earned the right to call stumps on his ODI and Test career whenever he wants to. And there was something in there about, make sure you go out and watch him against the West Indies in this Test series. He's one of our greatest. Whenever he does call stumps on, it will be, he will go down as one of our greatest ever players. That kind of put the alarm bells in my head going, no, please don't. This can't be your last series. We don't, I'm banking on him going to Australia. And I think all New Zealand fans are kind of hoping that he'll at least be playing Test cricket all the way through to that tour that New Zealand have all got looking forward to, over this time next, bit late, end of next year. And then even maybe into that 2027 World Cup. That's sort of what I'm hoping he will be able to carry on till and will want to go on till. But it sort of raised the alarm bells when I see things like that, like get out and watch him while you still can. That made me worry a little bit, but maybe I'm reading too much into that.
Should we move on?
Let's do it.
So from a bit of England woe and New Zealand joy, we can talk some Australian cricket as well. So Baldy, it's like a good start, I guess, to the summer from a hype perspective in Australia. The Channel 7 boys doing a good job of whipping up a storm, and probably India a good team to come over and fill some stadiums early season. There's been plenty of noise at all of these white ball games so far. Anything that you've got in the form book, first and foremost, from an Australian perspective out of these white ball games, before we come on and talk a little bit about the brilliance of Rohit and Virat?
Yeah, I mean, India were very, very well supported in that ODI series in particular. The T20's a bit of a damp squib in Canberra in terms of rain affecting that result, but India were on track for a big total. Not so much in the second ODI, and I think what we've learned, there are no new notes here, right? From what we've come out of or what we're taking out of this series. Josh Hazlewood is probably our most important bowler going forward and has been the form bowler for Australia in white ball cricket for a period of time that is getting extended more and more the longer we go on in this game. And he was able to do the same kinds of things that Henry and Foulkes were combined able to do for New Zealand against England. So his control of length was immaculate. I think that's the thing that really is making me sit up and take notice, is his control of length and his ability to make the ball uncomfortable to play at length is the thing that we're really taking away from this series. The other thing that I'm taking away from this is that Xavier Bartlett is becoming a genuine option to potentially play for Australia in that Ashes series, given that Doggett's dealing with some injury. Obviously, there are a number of other players that are dealing with injury as well. He's putting himself in the frame. I really like what he's been able to produce for Australia from a white ball perspective. I mean, his numbers are outstanding. When you have a look at the average, you have a look at the number of wickets he's taken in his first 4 or 5 ODIs for Australia. Like, they're up there with Gilmore, they're up there with Ryan Harris as being, some of the most productive in terms of wickets for the first 4 or 5 games for Australia in terms of all-time performances. So he's flying under the radar a little bit for a lot of fans, but I think he's firming as a genuine option if Australia are going to go into that Ashes series with the same level of depth that England are going to bring to our shores. Then a guy like Xavier Bartlett is going to be really important for us to be able to build that depth around our sort of big 3, big 4, if you like, in terms of those guys that are probably locked in to play the majority of that series if fit.
On the batting side of it, I know, detouring a little bit from the Ashes, sort of looking to that T20 World Cup. Do you think this, is this the group, like people like, Mitchell and
yeah, I think this is the group. I mean,
I was trying to think who's missing.
Well, Maxwell's missing.
Maxwell, yeah.
I don't know. Like, I can never remember which formats he's retired from, so it's very hard for me to recall which format he's still playing and which one he's not. But I mean, let's assume that he's not retired from T20s.
I think he's still playing T20s.
I think he's probably in the mix. I think what Australia are looking for are guys to bat around David, to bat around Head, to bat around Marsh. I mean, those are the 3 big
Marsh
ones.
Is still looking good, isn't he?
I really like Tim David at number 4. I know we didn't get a lot of productivity out of him in the first 2 games, but I like where he's at. The Cooper Connolly thing is interesting to me in that there was a substantial performance from Connolly with the bat in this series. I know there's a lot of hype. I like that, the 5 for 22 means that, there's talk about his bowling. There's now talk about his batting. What we're looking for from him going forward is consistency. We know that the talent is there. There's not a lot of runs on the board or wickets on the board from a body of work perspective. So what are we looking for from him? We're looking for more productivity, more often, more consistency than we got from Jake Fraser-McGurk, because he flashed in the pan, almost literally flashed in the pan, had 1 big score domestically, 1 score internationally, and then didn't produce consistently and fell by the wayside. And now no one's talking about Jake Fraser-McGurk. And I know that there were lots
of... had to refresh my brain when you said that up. Like, where's he been?
Exactly, right? So the consistency is what we're looking for. We're looking for consistency from Owen. We're looking for consistency from Stoinis as a veteran player in that Australian side, right? So that's what we're hoping to get going forward, building into this next T20 World Cup, because Owen's going to be important. I think Matthew Short's potentially going to be important for Australia because he bowls a little bit of spin. So we're going to need to find those extra options that we can get an over out of if we need to burgle an over in India from our spinners, whether that's Maxwell, whether that's Head, whether that's Matthew Short, whoever it happens to be. We need a 6th or even 7th bowling option that we can go to for an over or 2 if things aren't going our way. If Zampa's getting hit or if Kuhneman's getting hit, someone like that.
Yeah. Baldy, I've been thinking about that. And like you mentioned some of those names with Connolly, and we didn't talk about Constance for obvious reasons. He's not in that side. And then McGurk. It's kind of like they're like the English version to Jacob Bethel, except you've got 3 or 4 of those guys that could have been picked as generational talent coming through, and difficult to give them all the cricket. But I'd rather be in your position as have three guys that you're talking about in those terms than one guy who's not producing. Because you could have been describing Bethel there. That you've not got this body of work. You've just got a nice haircut and a few eye-catching performances. And I'm glad you mentioned Bartlett. I was super impressed with him and had exactly the same thought process, which is there's been so much talk of, England are bringing 8 quicks down and who's the next cab off the rank and all that kind of crap. The reality is, Australia always, have this sort of ability to produce bowlers that, bowl over 85 miles an hour, hit the deck hard, because you need it on your wickets, right? It's lunacy, I think, to a large extent, that there's been so much talk about, England's depth chart from a seam bowling perspective being, something that's going to be a huge factor in this Ashes, and it might be. But yeah, I really liked him. And when you kind of add Boland and him to the mix, there's 5 people that can do the job. And then there's others as well that will be in and around that conversation. So, he shaped up really nicely through this series so far.
He definitely has, and he gives Australia something slightly different. I think he has the ability to swing the ball a little bit. I like that about him. Doggett is the same. I think if anything I learned from the England-New Zealand series is that if Australia are straight up and down, Duckett will marmalise us. Brook will absolutely destroy us. Yeah. The thing that I think concerns me slightly is if Boland is always in the same area and Brook knows where the ball's going to be, Brook could be very, very dangerous against someone like Boland.
A little bit of jag, though, Boland.
But if that goes away, like if it's straight up and down, then that becomes problematic. I think what I like from England's bowlers this time around, as opposed to Ashes squads of years past or even generations past, is that England are bringing guys who can hit the wicket hard. They're bringing Bryden Cass, who I think is going to be very effective in Australia because he's tall, he bowls into the wicket, he's going to get pace and bounce. And if there is anything to extract from the surface, he's going to be in prime position to be able to do it. So, yeah, I think this series is starting to shape up with some really interesting pace bowling options for both sides. And I just, like you say, there's a bit of moxie about Bartlett. I just really like what he's bringing to the table. And, even though Australia have got a lot of injuries from a pace bowling perspective, Morris is out, Jai Richardson's out again. There are a number
Cummins is confirmed.
Cummins is
test at least, isn't he?
Yeah. So he will miss the first test at least. It's shaping up to be a really, really interesting series from that perspective.
Since you guys are talking about the Ashes, how's the opening question? How's it shaping up this week? Been a couple of weeks since we talked about
Stark
the bus
and Hazlewood,
change.
mate. Stark and Hazlewood.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll lock in Stark from one end and Hazlewood from the other end, and I think that's great. Pat Boland bowls first change, and then we bring a bit of Gary Lyon on just before lunch on the first day to just see if it's turning a little bit, and we're good to go.
You're not sticking. You're going to stick with Labuschagne?
Look, here's the problem, right? I don't like the discourse that I'm hearing in terms of the way that this team is shaping up, because the way that the discourse is starting to emerge in certain circles is that Beau Webster, who's been nicknamed Slug Webster, which I find interesting, but
by whom?
I don't know, but it was appearing in several Murdoch Press news articles in the last week and a half. And I don't know if he's very slug-like, because he is quite a good mover in the field. He's got good hands. And I don't know any slug with hands. So it's problematic for me. Anyhow, he doesn't even have a mustache, so I don't really know where that's coming from. The problem is...
Further investigation needed.
It is required. The problem is that there's talk of him not playing.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
Potentially sliding Green down to 6 so that Marnus can bat 3. Which, to me, of all of this talk of bowling, the need for bowling in these Ashes series, particularly if the ball's not doing a bit, do we trust Cameron Green? I mean, he's not bowling in the series at the moment. He didn't really bowl, if at all, I don't think, in the latest round of Shield cricket. So that's problematic for me, right? If he's going to bat at 6, he has to be able to bowl. I don't think, as good as Travis Head has been over the last 18 months, as a better than part-time off-spinner, that he's our 5th bowler necessarily, because I think he can be taken to, particularly by Stokes, someone like that. So that's problematic for me. If Marnus bats 3, then you need an opener from the established players in the Australian side, whether that's Head, whether that's Green, whether that's Webster, whether that's Smith,
Is
whoever. I don't
Renshaw
know.
making a late run for it?
Like there are guys that are thereabouts. I was hoping that Renshaw would get more of a bat in this Australia-India series, but the bats that he had actually made me think that he's a reasonable number 4 one-day international cricketer. He didn't set the world on fire. He didn't hit 80 or 50, but he kind of batted at a run of ball without taking too many risks. And at 4, we could kind of bat around him a little bit. And I think if he had a better showing early on in the Shield season, then he would have probably been the guy that would firm up to replace Constas at the top of the order, because
he
he's
got
natural
100
opener.
early doors, didn't he? And then nothing
he did,
since then.
But Marnus has got 400s, and he's kind of like the narrative around the rehabilitation of Marnus is overshadowing the consistent good performances from Renshaw, and to be fair, from other cricketers as well. Campbell Kellaway got 147 in the last Shield round. Marcus Harris, even though he batted at 7, made runs for Victoria, and he's looked good over the course of the summer. Cameron Bancroft has looked good at times. A lot of the other guys that we're not talking about in the discourse are guys who've had 1 or 2 good performances, but not quite to the level that Marnus had. But the talk is whether or not he's going to go into bat at 3, or which would be probably his preferred position, or whether he's going to open the batting. And I think the only reason that you'd have him go in at 3 is if you're going to also keep Constas from a continuity perspective. But I don't think Australia can do that if they don't get reliability from Cameron Green at 6. So there's a lot of jigsaw pieces to fit in at the moment. And the challenge that Australia have got is that the 2 fixed jigsaw pieces, and Smith at 4 and Travis Head at 5, are probably the ones that you'd like to be able to move around the board a little bit to give you a bit more flexibility in your order. Could one of those open the batting? Could they slide up to 3 or what have you? So I think that's the challenge that Australia have got at the moment. And I don't think it's clear in the minds of the fans where Australia really should go. I think there is a Constas camp and there's a Marnus camp, and there's probably, if you live in Western Australia, there's a Bamford camp. And if you live in Victoria, there's probably a Campbell Kellaway camp or even a Peter Hanscom camp. But I don't know that there's much in a Slug camp at the moment, which is problematic because I think he's underrated for us. I think his ability to bowl a little bit of pace and get us out of trouble with the stick is a little bit underrated as far as I'm concerned.
I saw Josh Hazlewood shoot that down, though, in a press conference.
What's that?
He said, pick the all-rounders should be the first names on the team sheet. He was like, we're going to need bowling in this series.
100%.
I was surprised at how emphatic he was. So if he's saying that suggests to me that Webster's just playing. I don't know. I'd be very surprised if they dropped him to keep Marnus and Constas. That feels like ridiculous.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't think we should do that.
Let's we talked a lot about Australia's top order there for some red ball cricket coming up. Let's talk about India's top order in white ball cricket. I guess chat around whether Rohit and Virat stick around too long in this format. Certainly Rohit's put that to bed with his performances so far. And even as an Australian fan, Baldy, you must have seen a little bit of the romance in Rohit and Virat knocking off 230 odd at the SCG. That was it. Honestly, it felt like a home game, didn't it? From the noise in the SCG from the Indian fans.
They have been so well supported in Australia. I mean, wherever India go worldwide, they always end up with vocal support. Fans turn out to watch their team, which is fantastic. I mean, the atmosphere at those games, at those venues, often does feel like an India home game because the crowd is so vocal. They get behind their team so vociferously. But there is romance, I think, in this tour. If we're going to see Kohli on these shores for the last time, if we're going to see Rohit on these shores for the last time, having them put in a command performance in that SCG chase.
Yeah, which could be their last, be their last performance in Australia, couldn't it?
And it was magnificent. It was pretty to watch. It hit all the highs that you would hope that a Rohit and Kohli innings would hit. And so I think it was very, very special to see that go out that way.
It was the nostalgia. It was just a massive nostalgia hit, wasn't it? To see, yeah, and I think we've been starved of that for a while, haven't we? I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about Rohit because I feel like his drop-off sort of happened quite quickly, or it felt like he was going to play all three formats for quite a while there. A couple of years ago, it just seemed like he was at the top of his game. He had plenty of time, left. And then
the Border Gavaskar really, I think, did a bit of a number on his three format perception, I think.
Yeah, and even before that, it was falling off a little, and then it was kind of like, oh, now it's over. It just felt like, oh, now we're done now. When not that long before that, everyone was talking about him in positive terms.
100%, but it also coincided with the rise of Jaswell and the super emergence. I'm not going to say emergence because he was already on the scene, but the super emergence of Shubman Gill.
Went,
okay,
Abhishek
cool.
Sharma.
If we're not going to get Rohit at the top of the order at Test level, that's great. We've got Jaswell. He's locked in for the next 15 years. We've got Shubman Gill. He's locked in for the next dozen years.
Yeah.
We're good to go, guys.
Yeah.
I think if there was a hole, like there is in the Australian team post Warner, love him or hate him, there's a hole in that top order post him. Other emotions are available, folks. Not that many of you will choose any other than the one that Binksy's nailed his colours to the mast already. But there is a hole there. The Indian side, there's no hole because their depth is just unbelievable.
Yeah. And then it was great to see.
Yeah, on that, the phony war is brilliant at the moment. Yeah, you've got Warner and you've got Stuart Broad now, obviously in the media, and it's got a really good podcast actually, for the love of cricket with Josh Butler, and he's stirring it up as well, which is it's brilliant. And he's going to be with the Channel 7 team, I think, Baldy as well. Stuart Broad, he's going to be in the commentary box, buddying it up with Howie and Dewey and Huey and Louie and all the others. DuckTales cast.
Can I just say, I just want to go on record. I quite like Stuart Broad as a pundit. He played for England. He was a bit of a villain sometimes. He was the one that Australia really, got up against, and he got up against us. I really, really rate him as a pundit. He thinks about the game, the way he articulates the very, very specific pieces of the game that other audiences, like casual audiences, might not be attuned to. He brings that to the television in a way that's relatable. He, unlike me, has an economy of words that makes sense. He reminds me, he reminds me a bit of some of the greats in that sense, that have an economy of words and just hit the point really, really well. I part of me doesn't like to say it, but 90% of me loves to say that I really like listening to Stuart Broad talk about cricket, because I think he brings gravitas, he brings a bit of personality, he brings punch. I like it.
Listen to you two. Look, Binksy often talks about Ponting. You're talking about Stuart Broad. Look what cricket is bringing you together.
I think what Ponting's done though, and this is massive segue into commentary, but and punditry, and what Ponting's done really well, and he's obviously stayed in the game from a coaching perspective as well in the franchise stuff, and a little bit for Australia as well, I believe. He's stayed close to the dressing room in that respect, and that's probably why he's continued to be able to offer that level of insight that's so close to the dressing room and sort of modern. I guess reminds me a little bit of Martin Brundle on the Formula One. He obviously must do a lot of work around the technology and what the drivers are thinking to be able to offer some of that. And that's often the case when players go into the commentary box for a couple of years. They've been close enough to the dressing room to know what they're talking about in terms of some of the analysis that might be going into some of the tactics, etc. I guess the proof in the pudding for Broad is if in 2 or 3 years he's still able to do that when he's not necessarily privy to some of those dressing room secrets. But I agree with Baldy. I've enjoyed his transition into the commentary box, and look, we need someone in that Channel 7 commentary box to keep Mark Waugh in check, if nothing else. Because let's not go into his punditry because it's woeful. Okay, should we cover a little bit of Women's World Cup cricket?
Sure.
I guess for for all of us, really.
Do I need to console both of you? Yeah.
Well, and we can console you as well.
We consoled you last week.
That's old news,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, that's old news.
Have you gone through the 5 stages, have you?
Yeah.
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 Is it 5?
Well,
It was 7. Never mind. Okay,
They add stages.
It was. I will say it was emotional seeing Sophie Devine walk off for the last time. That was credit.
Yeah.
You know, she definitely deserves a shout out for all she's done for New Zealand cricket. So yeah, I don't say.
Please don't blow up in the comments, or in fact, blow up in the comments. I don't really care. I don't think these were the results we were necessarily expecting from these semi-finals. A week or so ago, I think we'd have thought England, after their dominant performance against South Africa in the round robin stages, were probably favourites for that game at Guwahati. And then, the Australian women's juggernaut would have expected to beat India. So we've kind of seen two upsets, really, I guess, to an extent. That the final starts in just under an hour's time. So just for those tuning in, we're not going to talk too much about that. We might ask for predictions on who's going to win that game in a sec. But yeah, Baldy, I might come to you first, although that was the second of the semi-finals. High-scoring game. Alyssa Healy, who's been so good for Australia over the course of, forever, really. Dropped a crucial catch and missed a stumping in that game as well, coming back in from injury. And then despite runs at the top of the order from Phoebe Litchfield and Elise Perry, and Ash Gardner's been brilliant throughout this tournament as well. We just can kind of keep talking about how good this Australian women's team is. Posted 340 and they got knocked off.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the third time India's put 300 on Australia in the last couple of months. So audiences shouldn't be surprised that India are able to score heavily against Australia, right? This is not a surprise. It feels to me a little bit like I imagine Indian fans felt in the 2023 Men's World Cup, where India were by far and away the best team at that tournament and never looked like losing up until the point where they did. Yeah. And they just happened to lose in the final against Australia. And now, unfortunately for Australian fans, the shoe's on the other foot in this Women's World Cup. Australia, despite having been in difficult positions throughout the group play, managed to find ways to win all of those games. Australia found themselves in a difficult position in this game, and despite knocking off the top of the order for India, which ostensibly was their formula for victory, I think if you had a look at prior to the semi-final and you said, India are going to win this game, how's it going to go? You would have said, well, India knock off Australia for 240. Spin plays a big part for them. And then India knock off the runs that they need by their top order, their top 2, top 3, getting big hundreds. And that wasn't the case. But Jemima Rodrigues played an innings of a lifetime to run down that chase for India. And I think they're firming as favourites in the final. But I've been saying that against teams that South Africa are playing for most of this tournament now, and notwithstanding the fact that they got hosed by England in that first group game, they've started to look better and better as the tournament's gone on, which South African teams have started to do of late.
I was starting to... India and South Africa, I feel like, are they, you guys have just been talking about the Ashes, but are those the two powerhouse teams in world cricket now, in men's and women's? I mean... South Africa is certainly making a strong case. I mean, we'll probably give them a shout out again at the end of the pod for what they've just done in Pakistan in the Test series. They obviously won the World Test Championship. They've been in, lots and lots of finals, semi-finals over the past few years in white ball cricket. And their women's side, the way that they bounced back after that first game against England has been, I don't know. I think it's nothing short of remarkable, really, in terms of you get pounded like that in the first game, and to now be sitting there in the final after completely reversing that and thumping England in that semi-final. It's magnificent. And, India, we talk about India all the time in terms of their men's, the depth that they've had. But, yeah, for Jemi Rodrigues to play that innings, I mean, that was brilliant. I mean, what she did was able to anchor that innings. Obviously, there was those missed opportunities. Tali McGrath missed that chance as well that, would have made things interesting.
Australia have been a little bit sloppier in this World Cup from a fielding perspective than we would expect from them. I think there was a game earlier on in the group play where they dropped 5 or 6 catches, still went on to win the game. So like the standards weren't there when they really, really mattered. And I think if Australia take away anything from this loss, it will be that those standards matter. And they matter more than ever now because, you know, in the back of maybe not having Healy going forward for very long, at least Perry's 35 now, I think, you know, maintaining those standards in the field, the athleticism, the catching, the run-outs, the stumpings, all of those little things are going to matter for Australia going forward.
And I mean, you guys talked when it was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, when we last recorded about the batting that we've seen in this tournament, and I mean that game in particular was an incredible demonstration of that again. I mean, you know, we haven't even mentioned Harmanpreet, who like her innings was fantastic. I think the way she kind of put the foot down right when it had to go, like the exact moment they needed to accelerate that run rate, she went, okay, bang, and it got, you know, she was dismissed for 89 at a time when, you know, it would have been nice for her and Jemi Rodrigues to keep going, but it set the platform for everyone else to come in and just be able to throw the willow at it. And I mean, you know, Litchfield, Wolfart in the South African game. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's great to see. Look, 4 or 5 teams really competing in this Women's World Cup. I think India have probably got more of the strength in depth than South Africa, maybe to continue that on. I think South Africa is still heavily reliant on Wolfart and Cap. I think, and there's others as well. Look, let's not make any bones about that. But I think the strength in depth in that India side is slightly better. So be interesting to see how this final goes. Australia will regenerate though, to an extent. You know, this might be the last World Cup, certainly 50 over World Cup for a couple of the girls. Baldy, you know, will Healy go again? You don't know. But they've got some fantastic younger players coming through as well. Final starts in 30 minutes time or something like that, just over 30 minutes time.
I was just going to say, I think for South Africa to win, it's going to need to be somebody other than Wolfart that gets them home. It's going to be someone like Luz or Chloe Treon. Like, don't sleep on Chloe Treon. I think she's a terrific cricketer. And she's had some important contributions, but it's going to have to be someone like that steps up and does something a little bit extra. I mean, the saying always goes, like, when you get to finals, people kind of play to their averages, right? Typically, like that's what people say. So if you're going to make a difference, I think if everyone plays to their averages, India win that game, right? And I think it's going to take someone like Chloe Treon, Sune Luz, someone like that, other than Cap, other than Wolfart, to step up and play an above average performance that's going to knock this Indian side off. I think if you just play it down the line, India are going in as heavy favourites, I think, in this, despite the South Africa's building form into this final.
Yeah, Binksy, I was just going to say before you know we move on, what was the general vibe in England about? Because I know that it felt like they were flying under the radar a bit, but they were building nicely into this, and they've gone into the semi-final. I know there was a lot. It seemed like that Ashes tour that they went on, or that the Ashes series, sorry, that was a very negative point in the women's game over in England. There was a lot of expectation. It just didn't go well. This seemed like somewhat of a rebuild was happening, and then, you know, you go out in the semi-finals.
Yeah, so I think point A, we really need to change the scoring system in the Women's Ashes, because to lose it 16-0, you know, it sounds pretty horrible with the point system. Obviously, a rebuild under Charlotte Edwards, who's come in and, you know, she's not been afraid to ruffle some feathers. Kind of came in and made some calls around fitness and questioned attitude a little bit. Sophie Eccleston had some time out. She's tapped Kate Cross on the shoulder and said, you know, you're not going to this World Cup. She's not been afraid to make some of those big decisions. And then, I think that you've got to give someone time to be able to do that. I think the minimum requirement for this English side was being in the Final Four. So I think to an extent, when you're playing in a ICC tournament, whether that's women's or men's, if you get to the final four, you're then talking about two knockout games, aren't you? And whilst you'd love to go on and win it, I think ultimately that's mission accomplished for this this English team. Certainly in terms of their performance reviews and all that kind of stuff, they're not going to go, well, you didn't win the World Cup, so let's have a rethink. A lot of the talk was around the middle order being the problem throughout the course of the tournament. It was the top of the order that got blown away in this semi-final. Heather Knight's been fantastic. Beaumont's been pretty good over the course of the last 18 months or so. That happens. Someone will rip through you at the top of the order. If we're kind of picking at, clutching at straws, picking at, what was I going to say? I don't know. The only thing I'd probably say is in that final group game against New Zealand, we were cruising to victory in that game. It might have been an idea to give Danny White-Hodge a hit in that game rather than her come in and get one or two not out. Although she did get 30 odd, but it was very much the sort of the team being blown away at the top of the order by Cap that put the nail in the coffin for that England team. And some bad news, I guess, from the final. It's been raining pretty heavily, apparently. Sort of 40 minutes before the toss, down to a drizzle at the moment. But it looks as if pretty much the full covers are on the pitch. There is a reserve day though, so fingers crossed we don't have some kind of farcical shortened game as the final of this showpiece. Do we want to talk about South Africa Pakistan quickly, Lip?
I just want to give them a shout out, really, in South Africa for winning that. I mean, I know they're now into the T20s. It was a couple, 10 days ago, I think that South Africa won that test. But I think we've been talking since that World Test Championship win. There was a lot of talk about, kind of a same thing that happened to New Zealand when New Zealand got into the World Test Championship final through winning most of their home games. I think at that time it was certainly viewed that New Zealand wasn't one of the best two test teams in the world. Similar view for South Africa. I think the global media would have suggested South Africa was not one of the best two teams. They go on to that game, they win the game. The next step is, are you a consistent test side? Can you show that in this next cycle you're worthy of being that? And I think going to Pakistan and winning a test in those conditions, and we talked a lot about their strength of their seamers and in South African conditions and in the World Test Championship final. But the fact that they go to spinning conditions and obviously without Maharaj in that first test, what a difference he made in that second test coming back, picks up 7 for. But even what a cool story for someone like Simon Harmer, who goes there, gets 6 for in that second innings and picked up his 1,000th first class wicket, which kind of just goes to speak of his career quite a lot in the UK over there, isn't it? Being Binksy.
It helps being the only person in the UK who can bowl spin during an English summer. But he's been fantastic for Essex. Over a decent period of time in his first class career. And I think at a time he was thinking about making a switch to play for England. He'd done a lot of the qualification period. But nice to see him get, what was it, 6 for in that game?
Yep. So, I just wanted to shout them out and say, again, it's kind of something to watch for me because this cycle is tough for them. I think they go to India at some point soon as well for more tests. We've seen a variety of pitches actually in India over the last couple of years in terms of, favouring, we've seen some flat ones, we've seen some spinning ones, we've seen obviously that New Zealand first test of that New Zealand series seemed around a bit. And so, we're seeing a variety now, but again, if South Africa can go over to India and actually present a bit of a challenge, then again, that strengthens their case of, I think they are. I've been saying it for a while now. I think they're an all-format team there, which is funny because 2 years ago, that they were sending a B side here or C side here, and everyone was kind of mocking them, including us, going, what is happening with South African cricket?
Oh, because it was disrespectful to the game.
Yeah,
that was a disrespectful episode. But after that, their test side has been excellent.
Yeah,
and the subcontinent is a very, very difficult place to go and win test matches, and they definitely need to receive some credit from everyone to be able to go in and do that. And it was their spinners that led the way for them. Yeah, awesome work.
I was also stunned when I saw because Babar Azam got 50 in that second innings, I think, wasn't it, of that second test, and his stats flashed up. He has 9 test hundreds. I was like, what? He can't have 9. Like, weren't we talking about him as the fifth, the fifth of the Fab Four?
Oh, that's where you're going with this.
And he has 9 test hundreds. That's it. I was like, what?
They don't play a lot of test cricket.
I guess so. Yeah, he's only played 60 matches, but yeah. Anyway, I mean, it made me sort of think of the drop off for him, of how he was being talked about a long time ago, and now, I mean, he's still a decent player, but yeah, he's not in those conversations and hasn't been for some time. That's it for me, Binksy.
Very good. Well, look, plenty of cricket going on. We'll be back next week to, I think, wrap a lot of that up. So we'll see the conclusion of the T20 series in Australia. So Australia-India games actually kicked off about half an hour ago. Australia 61 for 2 as we finish recording. We've got that Women's World Cup final allegedly starting in 45 minutes. We've also got Zimbabwe playing a series at home against Afghanistan. We'll talk lots more cricket next week, and then we're probably into the real build-up for the Ashes. We'll have an Ashes preview hitting your feed relatively soon. Hopefully we'll have some final news on the makeup of that Australia squad. Although, do you know when you announced that, Baldy?
Oh, day of the game, probably. I genuinely don't know. It could be as late as a couple of days before the game, I think, before they announce it, because I think they'll want to give everyone as much time, I guess, to be comfortable in their roles. I think there's this round of Shield games just gone, and then there might be one more Shield game.
Hazlewood's playing one more.
I think there's one
finished.
more.
Hazlewood's gone from the T20 squad, and I think there was talk of him playing one round of Shield. So.
Yeah, so I think there's 4 Shield games before they pick the Test side. But if I was Australia, I'd want to pick it as early as possible. But they might.
There's no camp, Baldy. You're not going to go and make them, carry bricks around the outback or anything.
Oh, I would, but I don't think Australia operate that way now. They're a lot more in the England setup of going and playing golf, having a bit of fun, doing a little bit of modern team bonding.
Right. Bit of laser tag, and then
things of that nature, rather than heavy net sessions and running up sandhills. Yeah, it's not the modern way.
Very good. All right. Well, look, lots more cricket to come up. We will be back in your feeds over the course of next week or so. But that is all we've got time for here on the Top Order podcast. We'll see you next time. Good night.